This is an 11 Alive Voices for Equality special, celebrating Hispanic Heritage Month.
Thank you for joining us for this special edition of Voices for Equality honoring Hispanic Heritage Month. In the next 30 minutes, we're celebrating our local Hispanic culture and talking about the issues and disparities the community is facing. You'll hear from them on what it means to be Hispanic and how they are breaking barriers and advocating for a better life right here in our state. These are stories of culture and power, and they are important now more than ever as the Latinx population in Georgia is growing fast. The impact they're having here is growing too. A big part of that growth started when the Olympics came to town in 1996. Cheryl Preheim explains how Latinos helped carry Atlanta to the finish line.
From the Fountain of Rings to Turner Field, the legacy of the 1996 Olympics is now landmarks. But beyond Centennial Olympic Park is the international impact of the Games.
They found a lot of their cousins and their brothers and their sisters here. They opened tiendas, and the next thing we knew, Beaufort Highway was sort of the Ellis Island for the Latino community in Atlanta.
As the city rushed to get Olympic ready, Samuel Zamarripa says Atlanta's cultural corridor blossomed too.
I had seen some data that said there were 100,000 Latinos in Georgia, and we were astonished. I mean, we thought, oh my goodness, how could there be that many Latinos here in Atlanta?
Before becoming Georgia's first Latino state senator, he worked under Andrew Young as the former mayor bid to bring the Games to Georgia. Atlanta won, championing a new era of growth.
The Olympics just exaggerated the need for labor because things had to be done fast. And so, yeah, I think that there were a lot of candid discussions.
When the stadium was 3 months behind schedule, city leaders looked to the border.
We had daily bus service between here and Houston. 2 and 3 buses would arrive every day.
The Olympics drove a new conversation.
And so immigration became an economic issue. There was opportunity, there was good wages, there was a shortage of that labor.
Census trends show Latinos already discovered Georgia in the 80s.
The most well-known baseball team in Mexico was the Atlanta Braves. So the Mexican community knew about Los Bravos.
And then drawn by Olympic opportunities.
The Olympics was the first domino.
Daniel Vargas came to Georgia in the 70s on a work transfer from Puerto Rico. Over time, he adopted a different occupation.
But people would say, what do you do for a living? I said, I'm a Hispanic leader.
He says Atlanta's Olympic history was not all glory.
And they're telling me, well, we're getting ripped off here, we're getting ripped off there, people aren't paying us. The Latino community on the whole is trying to be accepted.
A community supporting Atlanta's infrastructure needed support.
We had to sit there and prove ourselves. We didn't have a newspaper. There was nothing.
So after the medals were handed out and athletes left, Vargas and others helped the new workers make Georgia home.
They came to work, but they also then sent for their wives and children. Pretty soon, they developed a community here.
More than 1 million Latinos are now in the Peach State. And as that number climbs, Vargas says we all win.
Optimistically, the future is going to be bright. We are going to colleges. We are getting educated. We are the next generation. The world is never going to be the same again.
As the community continues to grow, they need more support. Local immigrant families are in urgent need of clothes, food, and donations. Georgia's Latin American Association received a record number of immigrants asking for help recently. That's the highest request in the last 50 years. We take a look at this need and what's being done to help.
They went through Colombia. It took them 6 months to get here by foot. The conditions must be pretty horrible in their country for them to take that risk.
A risk worth taking for families wanting a new start, a new country, and a new dream.
It's an immediate crisis for these families who have come with nothing.
For 50 years, the Latin American Association has helped these families with many services, including food, clothing, and shelter. But this month, a record number walked through its doors.
A couple of days we had folks that were sleeping outside of our building, so when somebody got here in the morning There were folks here waiting for us.
CEO Santiago Marquez says many come here seeking asylum and that 98% of them are Venezuelan like Grace Kelly.
I got here 1 week ago. A church paid for my airplane to come.
The LAA on average in the last month has been receiving about 25 families a week. That's about 5 families a day. Grace Kelly and her 4 kids was one of them.
I'm really grateful. They have helped me a lot.
But the rise in migrants combined with inflation and the pandemic means there's an urgent need for donations more than ever before. Many shelters are now at capacity and housing is getting harder to afford.
In some cases, the shelter that we work with, part of their requirement is for folks to have IDs. Some of these folks don't. So the whole key here is how can we stabilize them immediately and get them some short-term housing, right, as their status and their situation is being analyzed.
And part of getting established is registering to vote. A new report finds Hispanic voters could play a significant part in deciding our next governor and senator. We explore how this could impact our upcoming elections.
Really excited to vote this year. It'll be my first time, and so I feel like I've been dreaming about this day for a long time.
Laura Campos is one of the nearly 97,000 newly naturalized Georgia citizens. She made it through the 18-month backlog of pending citizenship applications. In Georgia, it's taking 7 months longer than the national average.
It was expensive and really overwhelming. The application was really long with a lot of terms I didn't really understand.
About 75% of those new citizens are originally from Asia and the Americas. According to this report just released by the National Partnership for New Americans, most are picking the Atlanta, Sandy Springs, and Roswell areas to live.
If there are counties where there are significant blocks of naturalized voters, they of course will play a role in deciding the future of the U.S. Senate and, of course, the presidency as we march toward 2024.
Right now, Gwinnett is still the only county requiring ballots to be available in other languages.
We're pushing for more counties to be added to that, but that's not happened just yet. And we also are providing voters with a way to build their ballots in both English and Spanish, with information about the candidates in English and Spanish.
For perspective, the 2018 governor's race was the closest in nearly 60 years, while Brian Kemp won by a little more than 51,000 votes. That's nearly the same margin of voters who supported Stacey Abrams in Gwinnett County. These local groups believe the recent number of naturalized voters could change those margins and possibly change election outcomes.
You have a strong philanthropic community. You have strong API serving organizations. You have a mayor's office of immigrant affairs that's supporting this larger vision of inclusion.
More Latinos at the polls this November means there's a high demand for bilingual poll workers. A local nonprofit is searching for translators to help make voting easier and more inclusive for those whose first language is not English.
This is where a lot of people like to say where the magic of voting happens.
And where bilingual poll workers like Alba Villarreal are being hired.
The first woman I did help, actually the most challenging, because she was very recently naturalized. She had her passport, she had her birth certificate, because she didn't know what to bring. She did not speak English that well.
But for other voters, Villarreal says not knowing English keeps them from going to the polls. She's worked 3 elections in Norcross where only 10 people have needed her help. She believes it's because voters don't know translators are there to help.
Because of the poll worker shortage, it's very hard to have someone who's bilingual posted at every single polling location. So of course people are discouraged to vote, because they're afraid that when they get there, no one's going to help them. They're going to be confused.
That's why nonpartisan group Galeo is trying to inform voters that they're there, especially now that it says the number of Latino voters in Georgia grew by more than 57% since 2016.
We look at the high density precincts to make sure that we have volunteers that are ready and able to do that. We're knocking on doors. We're having conversations with community members. We are registering people at festivals.
Gwinnett is still the only county offering ballots in Spanish and English, so Villarreal says translators are desperately needed elsewhere.
The minority communities who speak other languages are immediately at a disadvantage. Immediately. There is only so much that external resources can do.
Next on our Voices for Equality special.
Most health insurances don't accept people without Social Security.
Barriers to health care.
Those are the folks that have the most difficult time.
How Latinas are fighting to get better access.
It was picture perfect. The McIvers had the storybook life, but things weren't as they seemed.
I'd never seen a couple as much in love as these two. It was real.
He had absolutely no reason to murder his wife.
But maybe the opportunity arose and he took the opportunity.
Welcome back to our Voices for Equality special honoring Hispanic Heritage Month. An important issue impacting our local Hispanic community is access to health care. Experts say this all stems from a bigger problem. Angelica Salazar Jimenez makes up part of the nearly 50% of Latinas in Georgia of reproductive age who are uninsured. For her, it's about the cost.
Health insurance is really expensive. Most of the ones I've looked at are around $500 a month and can be more than $1,000 a month if we add up my 4 kids. Imagine the cost annually.
She says for others, the problem is even bigger.
Most health insurances don't accept people without Social Security, and a lot of Latinas here don't have a Social Security number.
Another reason, the state's decision to not expand Medicaid. This new study done by Georgetown University shows that's why Georgia ranks 46th for the highest uninsured rate, disproportionately affecting women of color.
Poultry processing, agriculture, they're gig workers, low-wage workers. Sometimes, getting employer-based insurance is difficult in those jobs.
Dr. Roxana Chica says this creates a ripple effect on the community.
There are some Latina women who are documented, who have a green card, but they're banned from obtaining health insurance through Medicaid for 5 years. There's a 5-year waiting period.
She says things won't improve without federal action.
Quite frankly, immigration reform, so that these women can have a pathway to citizenship where they can have better jobs, where they can access employer-based health insurance.
Salazar Jimenez, who works at a tax office, says her family can't afford insurance until there's a change.
If the health market could accept people with the individual taxpayer identification number, which is given by the government to people who don't have a way of getting a Social Security number to do their taxes, maybe that's a way more Latinas could get health insurance.
Lack of insurance is just one of the reasons why Georgia's maternal mortality rate is much higher for women of color. And now with the Supreme Court's decision to overturn Roe v. Wade, experts worry the impact on Latinas will continue. Let's talk maternal mortality. Georgia has one of the worst ratios in the country. According to the Center for Reproductive Rights, Black women in the state are more than 3 times likely to die from pregnancy-related complications than white women. And Black babies here twice as likely to die than white babies. Feminist Women's Health Center says the overturning of Roe could raise those alarming statistics even further.
There are folks who have access and privilege that are still going to be able to access abortions. Folks who already go through so much to come to our center. These are folks who are Black, who are brown, who are immigrants, who are refugees, who are survivors of violence. Those are the folks that have the most difficult time accessing the most important critical abortion care that they need.
But why? Aside from accessibility and transportation, the nonprofit organization says there are also financial barriers.
Not everyone is documented, so then there's another issue of health insurance. Even when folks do have health insurance, there are a lot of services that are not covered.
Hispanic Alliance Georgia explains many women from communities of color end up going straight to the hospital to give birth without seeing specialists throughout the pregnancy, without checking on their baby's health or their own, leading to more deaths.
We're talking about $150 a month for just the prenatal care. Yes, they can pay in installments, but for those living in poverty, that really means that they have a debt at the end of their pregnancy.
Latinos also face a language barrier.
They're very disconnected from the services.
Lack of education and medical mistrust has been a problem too. In Georgia, 23% of Black women and 49% of Hispanic women said they don't have a healthcare provider.
These are the folks that will be impacted by this the most, I feel.
And now they'll try to figure out new ways to help those already hard to reach. Still ahead on our Voices for Equality special.
It brings me close to home, to my roots. I feel more closer to my people.
How one place is helping Latinos feel at home in Georgia while still honoring their roots.
The Jennifer Hudson Show is here. Everybody put your hands together. I got to talk to you now.
I left work to come.
You left work? They gonna see you. He's with me today. We're lighting up daytime, baby.
And you're gonna bless people every single day.
We're giving back, lifting each other up. Something hits you in your heart. We're doing it all. Mama Hood, coming to the rescue.
The Jennifer Hudson Show, weekdays at 3 on 11 Alive.
Familia. That's what it feels like when you walk into Plaza Fiesta on Buford Highway. For the last 22 years, it's served as the epicenter for Atlanta's growing Hispanic community. Jennifer Bellamy tells us how it is keeping the Latinx community in touch with their roots.
In many cities in Mexico and Central America, there's always a Plaza Fiesta wherever you go.
Stepping into Plaza Fiesta in Chamblee is like being transported. The vibrant colors and sounds can only make you smile. And many of those same smells and familiar flavors from your abuela's casa bring a bit of comfort from afar.
They're coming in here and they feel safe, and also they can get all the services that they would need when you are a migrant in this country.
Learning to assimilate while still being able to hold on to home, Plaza Fiesta is that beacon for the Latinx community in Atlanta. Hosting fiestas, finding quinceañera dresses, feeding the familias, and bringing different Hispanic cultures together to celebrate with pride.
It brings me close to home, to my roots. I feel more closer to my people. Living in Mexico for many years, I haven't gone back after moving back here to U.S., and I feel very close to the people once I come and visit here.
The Latinos love to come here, kind of go back to their roots for at least a couple hours, and then they leave the place, and then they'll go back to the normal, USA. We like to maintain our culture, where we come from, our heritage, and we're very proud of it.
With more than 180 vendors, they're ready to share their rich history and culture with the rest of Atlanta, to help those not so familiar with the plaza to begin to find pride in the Pueblo too.
It's a global community, and it's just not one country or one language, one race. No, we are all.
The power of music to remind people of their roots. A local mariachi band is using its sound to celebrate Mexican culture.
For seniors, this cell phone and your PC can be your best friend or your worst enemy. Fall for a scam, and you could lose everything. The U.S. Public Interest Group and the Wall Street Journal report a whopping 1 billion robocalls last year and 12 billion text scams just last month. If you don't know who is trying to contact you, ignore it. Beware of scammers using familiar names, making phony threats, or trying to cancel your credit cards. I'm Bill Liss, and we are your senior source. Go to 11alive.com/senior source for details.
Storm Trackers. It's how you see weather happening now across Metro Atlanta. How you can plan ahead by knowing what's coming overhead and stay weather ready wherever you are. Watch the 11 Alive Storm Trackers.
Welcome back. A guitarrón, trumpet, violin, and vihuela all make up the beautiful sounds of a mariachi band, and one local group is using their music to ring in their Mexican roots.
Me dedico actualmente a la música de mariachi regional mexicano. Tengo 4 años trabajando aquí con el grupo de los mariachis. Que es el guitarrón, trompeta, violín y vihuela. Son, como quien dice, lo necesario para sonar un mariachi.
El guitarrón es el bajo acústico de 6 cuerdas, es el alma del mariachi.
Este es como la batería que tiene que llevar el ritmo.
Estamos hablando de los años 1800, cuando empezó el movimiento del mariachi. la música mexicana empieza a relatar las historias del pueblo en sí, de los campesinos.
Parte fundamental de la cultura de México. Somos la música de México en el mundo, no nada más en Estados Unidos, en todas partes del mundo. Usted dice mariachi, todo el mundo nos reconoce.
Well, thank you so much for joining us for this special edition of Voices for Equality. You can read more about these stories and more on 11alive.com/voices.